I'd like to talk about the Norwegian mitten, specifically the thumb gusset. So it's triangular in shape, and increases are typically done to either side in the background color, so it doesn't even show that there are increases there. And then it's placed on a holder and you add extra stitches and then knit the rest of the mitten. So I'm going to demonstrate that, but before I do, I'd like to talk about the different parts of the mitten. So in the Norwegian tradition, specifically the Selbu mitten, you would see ribbing and maybe shorter ribbing in the older types, maybe just not even quite an inch. And this would indicate that the mitten is for a man or a boy. And if there are lace cuffs, then that is indicative of a woman's mitten or a girl's mitten. So the different parts then usually include a stripe, a horizontal stripe in the ribbing, if there's ribbing, and there is a pattern right above the ribbing that goes all the way around the mitten. I call this the bracelet. It just sets the stage for the main motif. So this is called an 8-blad rose, or 8-blade or 8-petaled rose, and it's a very typical motif, particularly in the Selbu tradition. And there are other little small details on the sides to help break up the long floats. Now this particular mitten is used in my Norwegian mitten workshop, and to keep it really simple, I got rid of a lot of those motifs there, so it's easier and quicker to knit. But it's great to have motifs in here so that you don't have to weave the yarns on the back of the work to avoid those long stretches of yarn that aren't being used. On the back side, there is a different motif, usually a small motif. And note this motif here. This is shown in the thumb. Now, not necessarily all the time do they do that, but they try to bring something from the front to the back to pull it all together. There are what I call seam stitches along the edge, and they start above the bracelet and go all the way up to the tip of the mitten. And the mitten is very typically triangular in shape. These seam stitches are called stulpa, and it means a band. And so when you get to the tip, you'll see that there are decreases along here, an SSK and a knit together on the front, as well as an SSK and the knit together on the back. And you would decrease down to just about 4 or 8 stitches. This is a beautiful book that came out recently, and you can see all the wonderful variation in motifs. Norwegian charts have a very specific way of being made. You can see that the thumb gusset here is shown actually here, and they just take a block out of the palm side of the chart. So as you work across, you have to hop over to this part to work this area. And when you get up to the end of this block, that is when you will take off these stitches from the palm, put them on a holder, and then later when you're ready to knit the thumb, you come back, put those stitches onto a needle and do this part. This is the thumb pattern. I tend to chart gussets a little differently because I want to show the alignment, and it enables you to read straight across the whole way. So the gusset is right here, and you can see that you work across, you hop over this white space, which indicates that there are no stitches there because they haven't been created yet. and you would do an increase and hop over the other white space and finish the round. And you continue across, doing that several times. And when you get up to this spot where there now are no more stitches here, this is when you will take these stitches off, put them on a stitch holder or put them on a piece of waste yarn, and then you will cast on this number of stitches to replace 2/3 approximately of the number of stitches that you took off. And that will help to make the thumb fit better. It won't be as wide here. The width will then be here around the thumb where you need it. And then, so there will be a hole as you complete the rest of the mitten. And when you come back, as I had said, you'll take these stitches off of your waste yarn, put them back on a needle, and pick up stitches around and complete the pattern. Here is a mitten that I'm knitting from the Selbu Mittens book with the dancing ladies and men and dogs. It's just a charming pattern. And I've come to the place where I'm going to take my thumb gusset off. You can see the thumb gusset. And this is actually shaped a little differently. Instead of increasing along the perimeter of the thumb gusset, increases were made on either side of this central stitch. So now I worked across the round till I got to the point where the thumb gusset is, and I have a tapestry needle with yarn threaded through it. And now I'm just going to slip these stitches to that thread. There we go. Now, just for safety's sake, I will just tie those ends into a little bow or a knot, just to hold those stitches in place until I need them again later on. Now, here's where we are. The yarns are still over here, and we need to somehow form a bridge to continue knitting in the round. In this particular pattern, I'm instructed to cast on 18 stitches. Now I took 19 off and I'm putting back 18. That does not follow the rule that I just mentioned, but I'm going to follow the pattern. So it said to use the two colors, and really it doesn't give me any indication as to how to cast on. And because I have two yarns, I'm going to use both of them with the long tail method. And I typically will put the color that is the background, which is white in this instance, over my index finger so that it won't really make much of a visual difference once we pick up for the thumb later on. Now the yarns have crossed the gap, and I'm ready to continue knitting on in the pattern.